Hello everyone, my name is Robin, and a few months ago now, I sat down with ThatKaitoDan to rank our top 10 side or supporting characters in the world of RWBY, which has now been going on for 10 whole years. But before getting to that though, please be aware that you are currently watching part 2 of this collaboration for ranks 5 through 1 of our top 10. For ranks 10 through 6, please go watch part 1 on ThatKaitoDan's channel. There's a link to that video in the description. And while you're there, subscribe to him, leave him some love, tell him I sent ya. He's a really good dude. Of course, as this video was recorded months ago, Volume 9 had not yet aired, so we had no clue what would happen in it. But with Volume 10 signaling the potential return for many of the show's side characters or supporting characters, now is a great time to reminisce. This collaboration was an incredible undertaking, so please enjoy. So that was your number 6. If we can head into your rank 5 for this list.
Fit in this because I actually just changed this around. Like as we were talking, I changed my number 5 now to being Sun.
All right. Yes, we've had a little bit from me on Sun earlier.
Yeah, and it's very much echoing a lot of the same things that we just covered with Ilya and with your period on Sun earlier. Again, it's another perfect foil character based on just a lot of the characterization that Sun has, like fantastic stuff with Michael's performances over the years, even in like the more jovial moments where there's not really much progression there. Even in the lowest moments, Sun is always someone who gives a bit of levity and a bit of light that you cannot help but admire. He's the kind of person I would genuinely want to sit down and have an hour just chatting with.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would get at least something out of it as entertainment value, good bonding experience, or just having a bit of a new perspective on life in a sense, which is weird for a character as very lackadaisical as Sun to an extent, which is interesting because he's also a very proactive character, almost to a detriment. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff about Sun's role as a leader that shows his flaws there, which is covered well in Before the Dawn, which, by the way, we forgot to mention, you haven't read Before the Dawn, have you?
Well, just to give myself some context here, because I imagine this might come up with other characters involved in these books later. I read After the Fall front to back in one sitting in when it came out. Before the Dawn and Roman Holiday I own, but have not read either of them yet. So I don't have as much to pull from for the characters that are involved in those books.
Yeah, and I think that is a bit of side material that really still continues the strongest elements of Sun's character, but also finally starts to shine a light on some of his flaws that can also benefit the story and the themes that are being explored. Like in the book, it's highlighting a lot that Sun, for as free-spirited and how beneficial it comes from him going on his own will, on his own wants and desires, and obviously how beneficial that was for Blake. It's also showing that he is not grounded enough to be a leader in some extent, but he's also still someone who is the best fit, especially in his team. Scholar is the pseudo leader in his absence, but we see through the book that he struggles with that, and we can't really expect the leader to be Neptune with all his flaws and Sage for being Sage, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Sun is the right kind of inspirational character for anyone he comes into paths with, that even his absence can shine a light on some good areas of growth for those related to him. Again, him not being there kind of shows how important he is to Team Sun. He also still has some great chemistry with the likes of Velvet, especially with Coco, how they kind of compare as leaders. And again, even in the lowest of points, he is someone who can bring a smile out of the characters and the viewers. He has great dynamics with Gira, especially that not the best of dynamics, but it's still entertaining. It kind of shows some nice bit of levity when we needed it.
Right.
Also good stuff there with Kali and Ilya as well. He is such a free-spirited character that is such a strong positive, and a lot of that is so endearing to watch how it interacts with other characters.
I don't have too much to add. Obviously, I've had my number 9 rank for him, so anything more to say about Sun?
Nope, I think we've covered all the bases on him.
Alright, so heading over to my number 5, Winter Schnee.
Oh.
Yeah, so this one was tough trying to find her spot on my list because she offers quite a lot for the overall family dynamics as a Schnee, getting to see her from her first scene in Volume 3 to her final one, as we've seen in Volume 8, all of the growth that's she's gone through, from the stability that she had in the Atlas military away from her father, going through and supporting Weiss quite a lot in Volume 3 to say, like, that was the beginning of, you know, carving out your own way, where...
which is interesting with how limited she actually was there.
Yeah, where she had a lot of support for Weiss, where at the beginning of what we know of her as a character, it looks like Weiss is now taking a similar yet different route of finding her own way compared to Winter of joining the military, finding her own way away from her father, where Weiss is becoming a huntress, Winter's in the military, and then we don't see or hear from Winter at all, I believe, until Volume 7. We do see her in a flashback sequence in Volume 5.
Through the Weiss character show, yes.
We know that she was in Mistral for a time, but she went back to Atlas. She was called back. And then we see her and her role with Ironwood and Penny, and her role with and against Weiss. All of these different relationships that she has in the Atlas arc that define her character, where she is and how she responds to the situation or doesn't respond, going from all of these different things that Ironwood is doing, all of these different points in time where Ironwood could change but doesn't, and he doubles down until she cannot justify these actions anymore, and she sees the influence and impact that Ironwood has on the kingdom, and she ultimately takes an opportunity that Meryl presents her with to get out of there and ultimately reconnect with Weiss. And she offers overall a great supporting role for Weiss, as I was saying, through Volume 3, and then ultimately meeting up with her again, Volume 7, Chapter 5, the moment that she shares with carving out her own way once again when presented with Freya. As much as Ironwood does force her into this role, she does still choose it. She does take ownership of it, and she is saying that this is my path. Yeah. Yes. And in that role is very supportive of Penny. We see how Penny and Winter interact. Penny and Winter have so many amazing interactions in Volume 7.
I genuinely, if you had told me like mid Volume 5 or like in the middle of the series, one of the strongest relationships to come is through Winter and Penny, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But...
mostly because Penny was dead at the time.
Well, yeah, that. but also it's like even in trying to think about it, then it's like you could see some dynamics there, but you wouldn't think of like it being strong as it actually ended up being. Like a lot of the heart in the Atlas arc comes from their dynamic and how they both reflect off each other, which is a fascinating new angle I didn't expect. But I still appreciate it by the end of it. At least for me, Winter was someone that I took a bit to get comfortable with. At first, I liked her in Volume 3, but the limited time that we had with her, plus I wasn't quite a fan of the slap that she gave to Weiss. Slaps, I would say. I think she gave like 2 slaps during Volume 3, one at the start and then one during the summoning bit, which does kind of like show, obviously, like she's more of a firmer hand, and she is kind of affected by her upbringing by Jacques, but that didn't quite seem fit into what I expected of Winter. For me, then in retrospect, it still doesn't. But then once we got into Atlas, she really did shine for me. The way that she did kind of serve as like this, again, continuing the mentor role with Weiss, the fantastic stuff with Penny, where she was kind of like showing like an element of being stuck in your role, whereas those around her are changing and adapting because of the circumstances that she herself would want to help in. Obviously, the stuff with Atlas and Mantle and Ironwood's slow descent. And it makes the moment that she does turn feel so rewarding. I'll admit, she's not in my top 10, but she was a high contention. Again, probably because of how I felt about her through Volume 3. She was so fantastic. Again, that stuff with Penny, where you see the reflection of the heart of the soldier, the heart of the protector, the man and the machine dynamic, which played off beautifully in the passing of the Maiden Torch.
Yes.
And she's just a very cool, obvious pun, cool character as well. The fights that she has, and I did like the dynamic she also had with Crow, which I'm surprised we didn't get more of as volumes went on.
Yeah, that wasn't
Which
really in volume 7
it
or
felt
8.
like something that was being set up to explore, especially like them having like seemingly past history, but we never really got that later on, which I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe reading in too deep. And I'm also really fascinated on like obviously she's now a maiden, like how does she handle such a massive burden on her shoulders when she is someone who has had to fight so hard to gain the status that she has and gain some freedom. Now she's also kind of anchored down by such a heavy torch that she's had to carry, maiden power wise, and also it being the last gift from a friend.
Yes.
And obviously, like how she reacts to obviously losing what she assumes Weiss and having to be this new protective figure for everyone, for so many people now. Again, it's like at this point, I am really sold on the character. Again, another strong performance. Elizabeth Maxwell, the perfect cast for that.
Yes.
She is such a key character in Weiss's dynamic that I'm glad that we got her. And the middle ground, so to speak, with how Ironwood is slowly descending, how some of the Aesops are slowly descending, but she's still like retains some of her human heart. Again, the stuff with Freya as well. In time, I was able to really connect with Winter, and I'm glad for it in the end.
Yeah, and kind of getting back to what I was saying with Volume 7 and all of the time that she had with Penny of what it means to be human and being in the Schnee Manor again and not being able to handle.
Yes, for someone so strong in the past, seeing her so fragile and so unprepared, it's fascinating because you would expect that she would go in with a strong resolve, but she is just as much driven by her emotions as anyone else, as much as she herself might not have been aware of.
Yeah, as somebody who her introduction to the series was part Volume 3, Chapter 4, she's telling Weiss in the training sessions that emotions can grant you strength, but you cannot let them overpower you. And she slips up in the manor, and it kind of goes back into Winter and Penny's dynamic and their relationship that gets explored so heavily again in Volume 7. Winter's narrative and Penny's narrative, they don't see each other for almost the entirety of Volume 8. They are separated, and it is until Penny makes her ultimate choice and chooses to pass things on to Winter that we finally see them in a place where they both have their choice and they both have their humanity again. Winter goes from there, and as you were saying, props to Elizabeth Maxwell, because everything in that scene of that gift and that goodbye, and then following that with the complete other side of her range of her screaming as the situation falls apart around her in the Yellow Brick Road, and she is not able to make any meaningful impact on that, and she just lets out this amazing scream.
Yeah, again, I cannot wait to see what her future holds, especially as someone who is now fully on board the Winter Schnee train.
Yeah, and that is all about I have to say for Winter. Heading into my rank 4 to start us both off, this is the character I had moved up a little bit earlier on, Raven Bronwyn.
Oh, now that is... Wow, okay.
Yeah, no, I had her a bit lower earlier on, and I'm like, what is she doing below all of these other characters?
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what was enough to really drive that change to go from wherever you had her before to number 4?
So, I want to say she was like 8 or 9 or something. I don't even remember, but
that's quite a jump.
It really is. And then I realized, like, as much as Mistral as an arc, as the 2 volumes, as much as they like don't age well, not that Volume 5 was ever so highly regarded, but
they're flawed.
Where Volume 5 shined, it really shined. And I really did like the individual characters, what Raven was to Yang, what Raven was to Crow, the scene that she has with Lionheart as well in the office towards the end before things kick off. She is the perfect character to hate as a person, but love as a character. She is one of the least likable characters in the show, but I love what she brings to the conflict and the story.
Love to hate in a sense, yeah.
Yes.
I can definitely see that for a lot of reasons. Some of the more obvious ones, and then some of the like the deeper angles of some of the actions. Like, you really do kind of like not so much like violently hate, but like you just the test to an extent that she would take those actions. And yet, I imagine for many of the reasons you like her, like there's some reasonings that you can understand for as morally questionable as they are.
She, as much as we don't know about Team Stark yet, and we can't really see...
That's another one on this list.
Yeah, as much as we don't know, and totally a lot of things can recontextualize or add more context to, in general, these characters that are involved. She's, however human she could be in the future, however much more human we could see her as in the future, you know, she still has this arc of abandonment for both Crow and Yang, and I am forever in the Raven Watch clown car. I'm there. You can meet me in the Raven Watch clown car in 2023.
I'll probably be skitching on the hubcap of it and just like being dragged along because like I'm there for the ride, but I'm not as as some other people.
You know, no, like there is a time and a place for Raven to come back, but to me, in a selfish way, that like even if it doesn't contribute so much to the narrative, or if the narrative weight might not even really be there, if she did show up out of nowhere, I would cheer.
Yeah,
I'm one of those.
I can
people.
agree, because she is someone who's like vast pool there is of morally grey characters who have done a lot of bad things but can still become good. She's one of the more fascinating ones because a lot of it is more down to like, okay, how has she changed as a character, not so much like what she can give to the story and like what impact she can have on those around her. It's more like, okay, what is she like now? That is a fascinating element if we ever do get her back, whenever we get her.
And, you know, as I said, time and place, and I know, like, a prevailing theory that a lot of people are either very for or very against is, like, she's the exit point for the Ever After in some way. And, again, like, I'm not sure I would be totally on board, but if it happened, would I be entirely against it? No.
No. No, I know that theory as well. I mean, me personally, I think we would need to see a lot of Raven beforehand to make that moment feel rewarding. But I wouldn't be against it either.
Yeah, and I don't see Volume 9 giving us time before then. But, like, part of me is like, it would be on brand for her to show up out of nowhere. Because that's her introductory in Volume 2, is even though we learn later that, like, that was the one time, it would also kind of show maybe a little bit of character development if it happened again. Now, granted, would that character development come out of nowhere? Absolutely. I'm not saying that it would be a good idea. But
she's almost as impulsive at times as Yang, which would definitely fit for
sure.
Character there.
For sure, she has her temper at moments too, where the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with Yang. But she is a character whom I do want to see get a redemption, and I believe absolutely could get one, depending on. This is something that I see us getting Team Stark flashback first, then Raven development, because.
Agreed.
I think we kind of have to know where it would come from for it to feel complete or holistic or worthwhile for Raven's character.
Because so far we understand some of the reasons. Like, she was someone who saw the deeper plot going on in the shadows and, in a sense, ran from it. As much as she herself would probably try to describe it a different way, she did look into the shadows and ran. Whereas, like, Crow remained, Ironwood remained, Glinda remained, some of the others fell. But we would obviously want to know a little bit more, like, okay, what was it about it truly that made Raven run when she is someone who is driven enough to want to go into Beacon to train and kill people? Also, another angle is like, what was enough to drag her to connect with Ty as well? Like, there's a lot of mystery to Raven that I obviously would want to see before any kind of redemption. But I agree with you. She's probably someone who is up there on the list in terms of characters who is probably due, or at least could have a very deserved redemption. And that could mean a lot for the characters around her. Like, obviously, again, with Yang, with Tai Yang, with Crow, maybe even to an extent with Ozpin. Like, that could be a show of, like, the people who Ozpin has lost his trust in can come back, and that can kind of rejuvenate him, that humanity can take a turn for the good.
Right, yeah.
A lot of that does come down to how dynamic a character Raven is. That obviously keeps like Raven watched out for so long.
Yeah. Raven is easily one of the characters that on this list that that's going to change when we get more of them in the future. Like, could go up higher, could go up a lot, could go down a lot more.
You would hope would go higher.
Yeah, I hope so, for sure. But there are some characters who I didn't put on this list because I want to see more of them first before I can really rank them, or before I have enough to see enough in them for this kind of list. But for what I've gotten from Raven so far, even if a lot of it is just the Raven watch clown car, I like what she did for Volume 5 with having Vernal as this decoy, being able to have that hype moment at the end of Volume 5 where it is this
fantastic moment.
Yeah.
I love that to death so much.
And not needing to have this mask on anymore in front of Cinder, and the heart-to-heart, or the fighting words, I guess, that she has with Yang at the end of Volume 5 as well. Of
Again,
finally,
another fantastic scene.
Which is very much like Watts with Cinder, where instead of Watts telling it like it is to Cinder, here is Yang telling Raven all of the things that the audience already feels.
And another character, much like we see later on with Winter, of someone who looks stable, looks strong, looks like they have everything locked in, shown to have some fragility, and shown that there is cracks in that supposedly ironclad steel shield.
So I would say that's about all I have for Raven. What do you have for number 4?
Number 4, and this is one that I thought going in would probably actually be my number 1.
Okay.
But for a lot of reasons, I think I can understand. I can justify it. Well, you'll be surprised.
Okay.
For a lot of reasons, I couldn't put her there because of other people. But number 4 for me is Emerald.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, this is not it. This is not who I was thinking.
I had a feeling I know who you're thinking of, but it's not her.
Yeah, no.
Emerald is someone who is kind of like that slow bubbling effect. Like, I like at the start, but as things progress, as things evolve and things start to heat up the flame, so to speak, it rises to such an explosion of a character that I thoroughly enjoy. Like, just on the surface level, I liked Emerald's design. I love her dynamic with everyone that she's intercrossed with. Obviously, Kaito, thief characters. I love thief characters. That's part of my alias and my name.
I do love a good heist as well.
Yeah, and she's got like a lot of the charms that I love in thief characters. Great chemistry with the good and the bad, the charisma, the confidence, the swagger, especially, and having a skill set that makes room for so much creativity. Like, obviously her semblance leaves a lot of room for that, but also like the way that she's able to be this cunning, sly, or the facade she has her with RWBY and being like this friendly person, but actually being like willing to backstab her if she could. But obviously, as the volumes went on, we got to see more of the human side. And that is the element that I think is obviously one of the strongest elements to her character. Like, out of all of the villains, she is the one that has probably most maintained their humanity. Like, obviously, Cinder's lost it at a young age. Salem, do we need to even go there? None of the other villains have as much heart and humanity still remaining in them as Emerald, and obviously that played into a big part of her redemption just last volume, which I was a big fan of. And again, just like the slow rise, again, the dynamic that she had with Mercury has been one of the best, I think, in all of the series, even with the limited amount of times that we had with her and Mercury through the Mistral arc.
Yeah.
That scene in Volume 6 where the two are bickering with each other, actually starting to fight, speaks a lot of like how strong that dynamic is, where even when they're at odds, they're almost like brother and sister in a way, where they depend on each other. They're the last kind of like constants they have. And even when they're showing off their flaws and showing off some of their weaknesses, they feel stronger because of the spat that they're having.
Right, and with Cinder having been gone, now they are relying, after the events of Volume 5, now they are relying more and more on each other, too.
Exactly. And also, to an extent, Hazel, once the Atlas arc comes around. And obviously, the stuff with Cinder is fascinating as well, where you're wondering just how deep of it goes. Like, is it just admiration? Or is it the classic leading villain and the subordinate angle? Is there a romantic angle in there? And obviously, when we get the flashback, we see that there's almost kind of like a dependence on Emerald, on Cinder, I should say. I love that one bit where obviously we didn't see it in visuals, but we hear Emerald talking to Cinder as they're recruiting Mercury. It's like, we don't need him. We got along fine with just us. And obviously she gets slapped for that, which is tragic and hurtful, and it just shows like the frail, like toxic elements of their dynamic, but it's still fascinating where you can understand why Emerald is so dependent. Obviously, as a street rat character,
the punk and the street
lone
rat.
wolf, you're enamored with that for all its bad and good elements, and you can understand why when Emerald snaps when she thinks Cinder's dead in Volume 5, you feel why she is so distraught by that, and the creative angle that was shown from that with the semblance like losing control. Like, she is someone that's like, I'm fascinated with every interaction she has with people, and even now as a hero, I guess we can now say is her. Like, she has great banter with Yang, where she's not afraid to speak her mind and be blunt.
Yeah.
She's kind of the new angle that the heroes needed, where a lot of them are a bit more rough around the edges, but they're still not speaking their minds fully. I also love the dynamic that she now has with Oscar, where like Oscar's kind of been almost in a sense like the advisory little brother to her, and the stuff with Hazel was good as well. For as limited as it actually ended up being, it's like you feel the heart in this character beyond all the sass and cynicism. Like, you see someone who's just looking for some kind of human element that she has lost for so long, that she's desperately trying to find in all the wrong places.
Her interactions in Volume 8, which you had said, like, there is so much. I forget the right term for it. Is it tsundere?
It's kind of tsundere. Well, like, yeah, she is like, she's acting mean when she's trying to be more like compassionate, or like she does have some well-meaning natures to her, but a lot of it comes out through snark and cynicism and bluntness.
Where you understand what she means, even though she's not necessarily saying it as well.
She's basically like in that one moment in the table room with the others. She's like, if we don't have if RWBY doesn't have a plan, then we are in serious trouble. She's saying that because she's like, guys, we need to take this seriously. We need to find a plan. If the constant for so many instances in the past has no answer, it's like she's being helpful in her own way, but a lot of that has been deep rooted under having to try to close up her heart and only open it to people that she's tried and have some kind of trust in. And I'm fascinated whenever we're going to get that future interaction with her and Mercury, and how that handles now. Where does she try to bring Mercury in? Does Mercury even want to be saved in a sense, or is almost like too far gone? And just how much that could cement her turns. Like, can she make a difference now that she's no longer having to count on, well, she's counting on others, but she's not limited herself to that. She's able to act on her own whims and not have to be ordered, not have to be following someone else's goal. She's wanting to act on what she wants.
And as you were saying, where Emerald and Mercury's relationship is exactly, like, where is it going to lead to after volume 8 with their hastened goodbye at the landing pad in Monstra. That is definitely something that I want to see explored further too. I think that their relationship could easily be a key determining factor of exactly how Vacuole might play out. And we see this goodbye, or their time getting cut short as Tyrion ushers Mercury along. I'm kind of wondering if the somber, or I guess honestly sad mood of that scene, if that is for Emerald, now that Emerald is kind of alone and doesn't have that support system outside of Hazel anymore, or if Mercury is feeling that same thing but just isn't responding to it as much as Emerald
he's
is.
Unable to really act on it, because again, like, compared to some of the other villains, Emerald has that humanity still within. Obviously, she's in the past almost kind of questioned some of the morality of the actions that they've been through, like the stuff in Beacon. Like, she's second guessing herself, whereas Mercury, he reveled in it because of obviously how he was brought up and how he views the world and what he wants out of it. Like, Mercury wants really just to be like at the top of the food chain, to no longer be hurt, whereas with Emerald, she just wants any kind of stability, even if it's not at the top. She just wants something, and that really makes her feel so human amongst the villains, and now amongst the supporting heroic side.
Yeah, and she is a late addition into their found family for sure. Where, and I remember there's so many of the scenes that she's had since the end of Volume 3. There's always some part of it where she's not okay with what's going on, as she's constantly in with the villains.
But she's never been able to really like act on it before, whereas because of how things transpire, and that time that where she didn't have Cinder around and she had to count on Mercury, count on Hazel, and even have to willingly put some kind of trust in Tyrion and Salem, but only out of fear, not out of any positive emotion that would benefit her truly. And I also, again, another voice acting bit, I think Katie Nuvar is one of the most underappreciated voice actors in general of RWBY. I think a lot of the heart and emotion that that character has comes out of Katie's performances, and I think a lot of people kind of like not really give her the credit that she deserves. I feel personally.
For sure. We're really getting down to the wire here. What do you have for top 3?
This was okay. When I started actually nailed down my top 10s, this was another one that was really rotating positions a lot. I'm sure a lot of people would probably have this person also up in their top 3, and that is Penny.
Yes.
Like, if she, out of all the characters we're probably going to discuss, she is like one of the best definitions of one of RWBY's strongest side / supporting characters, because we've had to deal with 2 strong arcs where she's been dropped on us as this bright spark of life and ripped away from us. But
the purest innocence.
Every single experience with her has been magical, emotional, and so rewarding for all the painful bits as well.
Yeah, and I think we might see a little bit more of this in our other selections before we get too far into it. I just want to say that, like, Penny is one of those characters who, like, you really want to call her a main character, whether it's because you really want her to have longevity or want her to stick around and want her to be more involved.
But sadly, the fact that she has been ripped away from us is kind of actually to a benefit, at least on this list, of her.
Yes.
At least for me, qualifying as a major, like full caps, major supporting side character.
She's
like
had
more so than
much
Crow,
time.
I would say. Brief as some of the moments we've had with her, it has been so endearing, entertaining. Like, she is someone this chipper and bright should not exist in a world full of darkness and painful emotions like RWBY, but it works so well.
And it's all the more
on every
hurtful.
aspect. Yes, again, from just on a face value, fantastic design. She's fantastic in fights. Like, Taylor, bless you, Taylor. We would not get a stronger character, I think, half of it without Taylor's performance. She is
1,000%.
fantastic. The evolution of her performances has come with the evolution of the character. I don't know about you, but when we were first introduced with her, I was on edge because I was worried about what this character was going to be like. Oh my god, is she going to be the quirky character that's more for comic relief? Is she going to be just like the brevity of light and like the pesky kind of pure innocence? That was what I was kind of dreading at first, especially with like the way she was introduced.
Exactly what angle are we going for here?
Yeah. I mean, I was entertained, don't get me wrong, and I did find her endearing, but I was like, oh god, I've seen this kind of character go south so many times. I was both interested and concerned. And then obviously once we got more of her through volume 2 for as little as it was, and then obviously volume 3, I don't think I'm gonna ever get over that. It's painful because I think that there still could have been more with Penny during the Beacon arc. Obviously, she had to be whisked away for so many reasons, but her dynamic with RWBY was so sweet, so sincere, and it speaks a lot of her impact on RWBY moving forward and how great their chemistry is, for like how light-hearted and chipper it was. All the quirks. One thing I missed from her later years is the hiccups when she lied. I love that stuff. It was cute. It didn't really like add anything to the character. It was just another like, oh, here's a Pinocchio reference.
Yeah, here's a quirk.
But that kind of shows like she was a very not perfect character, but perfect for what she was. And then here she is being viciously ripped away from us, and we thought that was it. And if that was for Penny, I think that would have been more than fine enough. Like, she would still be like in this top 10 contention, but I probably probably wouldn't have put her in my top 5.
Yeah, no.
Because she was like there for brief periods. She was cute in as so many of them. I still remember her little dancing at the beacon dance with the little bop she did.
Yeah.
It's like every scene that she was in, she offered something funny and unique compared to like all the different personalities at the time. But if that was all we got of Penny, and then obviously like the impact of her death moved forward, she would have been a definite top 10 contender there.
Yeah.
But then we got to Atlas.
Yeah, and then Atlas happens, and
Atlas was a trip. Atlas felt like Penny's original arc at a 10.
yeah, Atlas is let's take Beacon and expand upon that so much. It really does add to where she came from in Beacon, and the types of constraints and restrictions that she was under back then, and says, okay, let's pile so much more onto you. And I know that
so much trauma.
This is a point of contention for the fan base as well, but I kind of do see where you're going with this, and that I agree with you that it really does add so much more weight to Penny, and ultimately it was very worthwhile in my opinion.
Yeah, and for me, Penny during the Beacon arc, she was an endearing side character whose death showed more the tonal shift, and it was the tragic loss of a pure light as things were starting to get darker. But as we got into the Atlas arc and we got to see really Penny the human, like the human side that we got as well in the Beacon arc, but like a more truer sense of it. Like gone obviously was some of the like the more quirky sides of her, and like it was more, okay, this is Penny as like the hero, the source of light in this rather dire situation of Atlas, and also like a source of light for the heroes, because they have just gone off a very tumultuous time in Volume 6 with like questioning whether or not they should continue, the seriousness of like everything that's being placed on their shoulders. And then the first episode of the Atlas arc,
Yes.
and in comes Penny,
Right.
and all of us lose our collective shits.
Yes, exactly.
As the arc went on, we got to see that human nature beyond her dynamic with Ruby. Like, obviously, we've just waxed so lyrical about how great her dynamic was with Winter. That was a surprise selling point of that whole arc. But then we also got some great stuff seeing Pietro playing off her, and like seeing what actually motivated Penny's creation. Like, Pietro wanted something that can protect the world and be that constant source of light. And who better than someone who is just full of energy, full of spirit, not the best in terms of social interactions, but it also worked to her benefit. And yet she is also still tough. She is earnest. She is the truest sense of a guiding light. And then obviously once we got to the end, I know Penny dying again is another controversial angle for the character, which is interesting because you wouldn't think that Penny would have so many controversies surrounding her.
Yeah, no.
But that always kind of speaks to like how much we want that character around. But at the same time, it's like I understand the benefits of her death here, like obviously transferring the power to Winter, how much it's going to affect Jean in the future.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for Volume 9 with him there. And obviously, again, another angle on Ruby. And it just everything, like even her death, feels like such a worthwhile piece of this story.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of it comes down to how much we love this character to death. Pun intended.
Yeah, it's so weird heading into Volume 7 and meeting her for the first time again in Atlas. To go from that and then to now be at a place where I see Penny's death as rewarding and natural. It just...
Like, if I would genuinely say that Penny's second death has more meaning than the first.
100%, yeah. Rank 3, anything more to say about Penny?
No, I'm good.
All right. So we'll move on to me. For my number 3 is Pyrrha Nikos.
Well, that is interesting, but I'll let you carry on.
So Pyrrha, again, one of those characters you want to see as a main character because that's what she was at Beacon, and the story is so young when it's at Beacon, and there's so many different places that it could go, the potential, and Pyrrha being this fan favorite character, we want her. And yet now, I'd say we see Oscar, who only showed up after Pyrrha left, as more of a main character than Pyrrha.
Yeah.
Kind of. You know, such arrogance intensifies. Like, She is this tragic hero that we're seeing more and more after her passing, as still having ripples effect on the plot. She is this central character for demonstrating the position that the heroes are put in under Oz, where she is the first character that the world and the lore and the real overarching narrative of the show, she is the first character that is put under that weight and suffers the most, and now the rest of the heroes are there to now carry that burden and try to do it the way that they know Pyrrha would have, as this person who, despite not graduating, was still a pure huntress.
I would say even before the stuff with Ozpin, she's kind of like, when we started to first really understand, okay, what is the huntsman lifestyle? What is expected of a huntsman in training? Every single time you would probably look towards Pyrrha as that kind of like the truest sense of it, even with her still training as well. Like, she was gifted as a fighter. She was very noble and earnest. She was supporting of those around her. The only thing that was really like inexperienced of her was just the fact that she didn't have a lot of combat experience as a huntress. But you still look to her as that kind of defining early example of that. And then obviously once the stuff with Ozpin and the maidens, and she started to really carry that burden weight on her as well. And boy, does that kind of like define the character. Like, she was carrying so much to the point of eventually it being to a detriment in the end.
And as much as like we know there's a Maya Pyrrha out there somewhere, like we know
it can't just be for marketing purposes. Surely not.
No, because we know she's in the Justice League crossover movie, so in whatever way it manifests, there is a Maya model for her that we're gonna see, and it hurts. It hurts so much that everything moved into Maya except for Pyrrha and Glinda.
Yes.
Here, Glinda's got a Maya model. We're just waiting on seeing. Pyrrha and Torchwick are the only two.
Also, I would say Team Coffee.
Yeah, and yes, where I'm talking to you. Yes, Team Coffee.
Who, me? I'm gonna have to be clear now. Pyrrha is not in my top 10.
Whoa, okay, interesting.
Because she was the biggest victim of my requirements, my rules.
Yeah.
Because gosh darn it, more so than Crow, more so than Penny, I do still see Pyrrha as a main character.
Yeah, a main character that just happened to be gone.
She was essential for so much, even in her death now. If we were working off the same rules as yours, she would probably be 1 or 2, maybe. Because she is such a fascinating character. She was kind of like a defining supporting character for the whole Beacon arc, obviously with Jean, little bits with Weiss. She had some great stuff going on as well with Mercury that one time as well. And obviously she carried, like we were saying, the personification of what a huntress could be. And then obviously what the maidens are kind of like carrying on into the future. And few characters in this series has continued to send ripple effects into every single thing that came forward. Like obviously Remembrance in Volume 4.
Yes.
Seeing her statue in Argus.
Seeing her statue, getting a song again in Volume 6.
Cinder baiting Jean in Volume 5. It's funny, like we've had more volumes with her death having impact than more volumes with her.
With her in them.
When you think of like the tone shift for RWBY, it is Pyrrha's death and all the impacts it's had on Cinder, on Jean, on RWBY. Like few characters have the legacy that Pyrrha has. And even when you strip that away and you just focus on what she had beforehand, I love the dynamic that she had with Jean, trying to elevate him to being the kind of potential hero that he could be. Obviously a mentor figure for him. The straight A student dynamic that she has and the personality quirk she has also kind of like made for some great laughs as well. Like she was the straight-laced, very by the rules, but she's also got some rough edges as well. I still love that scene with her and Jean in Destiny.
Yes,
I think that is one of the strongest emotional scenes. Once again, voice acting praise, Jen.
Yeah.
If I was following your rules and regulations, if I buckled a little bit, because here's the thing, Pyrrha was on my top 10, but because of the way my rules were going, I did have to axe her, and that was how I ended up getting Taiyang into the top 10, really. Because I probably did. I think I had Pyrrha in my top 3, but yeah, like even without her not being in my top 10, she is a top 10 side supporting character, however you want to describe it, she is one of the strongest characters in the entire series, regardless of that.
Yeah, and I totally see you with her as more of a main character, just a main character that only got 3 volumes to leave her impact. And then just having so many moments where her ripple effects are being felt, like, to me, that's just made her feel more and more like a supporting character. Like, to me...
she's probably like the majorest of supporting characters for me.
Where it's too much of a supporting character that it feels more like a main, I guess. So I do understand. I do understand you leaving her out of your list, and to an extent, I would like to too.
As soon as she said Kira, I was like, God damn it, I should have kept her on the list.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. And I do see the value in us having 2 different sets of criteria, as much as, like, we could have nailed one down together. I like that we did go off on our own kind of with it.
It kind of speaks to the strength of how many great side characters there are in the series, but also even in her absence on my top 10, just how strong Pyrrha was.
So that's about all I have to say for Pyrrha. And you had Penny as your number 3?
Yeah, so it's your number 2 now.
And my number 2 is Penny Polendina.
See, I shouldn't be surprised because, again, we spoke so strongly of her. She had to be at least both of our top 3s.
Yeah, like, she is easily among, if not the most heavily explored character that's just not a member of Team RWBY and company, because of her significance and how much Ironwood kept her with him. Because she was so attached to Atlas and the secrecy of being...
She was the humanity that Ironwood was casting aside.
Yeah, for sure. Because she is so integral to only Beacon and only Atlas that she never got a chance to affect the plot on a grander scale that she definitely wanted to, and she did get to while she was around. I still love Amity, Volume 8, Chapter 5.
Yes.
Because that was the first moment where she made her choice to hold Amity up, where she had one of these several different forces on her that she, in the form of her father, saying, no, you need to stay with me on Amity, and it's too dangerous out there in the cold for you to be out there holding Amity up for however long we need it to be up.
Where before, those kind of things would have anchored her down, and she would not have been able to make that choice. Like, obviously, she wasn't able to make a lot of choices she wanted to do in the past. But it spoke of just how much it means to her to protect Atlas, protect her friends and family, that she was able to overcome that hurdle from such a very personal person in her life to make a rare choice that she was able to actually achieve.
And to be able to put her foot down and say, no, I am making this impact. That is her humanity, her having her own agency and saying that I am worth more than what I can do for the people who are giving me orders. My own sense of agency and my own person is more important, and my autonomy. And then she loses all of that under the effects of Watts' hack. And no matter what, I feel like her arc with her humanity and choice and agency and autonomy, all these words, like, it wouldn't have hit so hard if it were not Taylor McNee.
Yes.
Like, 1000%, which is, I didn't want to say too much while it was you talking for your number 3, but she is just genuinely too pure for this world, which is why she was removed from it twice. And so is her theme. So is her music, her leitmotif.
Yeah.
Every time we see it, it is so light and just pretty and pleasant on the ears.
You would not expect this from a character who, just at the surface level, is this bubbly, cute-looking girl in, like, lederhosen kind of style dress.
Right.
Because she's also one of the most complex, truest human characters in the entire series, and is also a badass, is also remarkably funny, and so endearing.
Yeah. And I will say that, like, part of... Like, I do love her design. You talked about her design as well. You'll know this because I like Ruda Tillerud from Arrowfell, who is not on this list. But with Ruda and Penny, what they share in their design is the green and orange aesthetic. I just gravitate towards those characters. Like, with that.
Yeah, that is a good combination.
If you want me to be endeared with a character before I even get a chance to meet them, you give them those colors. That is, I don't want to say too much more about Penny. Obviously, we've both had our own sections, and I weighed in on yours as well during yours. So
yeah, it is my time for number 2.
Who do you have for me, Dan?
This one is going to be interesting for so many reasons
Mm-hmm.
because my number two is Velvet.
Okay, yeah. I would say I
And I
was not
know,
expecting her to be your number two.
yeah, for some people tuning in, they might think Velvet her being at number two, that's surprising. I mean, yeah, she's not like a major thing, but being that high for me is a surprise. Like, no, because obviously I'm most known for being a big Velvet fan. Like, she is
Yes.
probably like in the same way like Keith Montalvo is a big Weiss fan.
Mm-hmm.
Cal is a big Neo and to an extent Fox fan, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And like I would say Arnold is like with Penny and even CL as well.
Yes.
Velvet is my staple character.
Yes, so seeing her at your number two is like, oh, that's. I was expecting her as your number one, to be honest. Like, if you're going to champion any one side character, I was thinking for sure number one, but take me through Velvet as your number two.
A lot of it is for personal reasons. Obviously, Velvet is a very sweet, very sincere, very earnest character. She's very grounded compared to everything that goes on around her. And obviously, she started out as a very character plot device and then expanded in the future. Obviously, as she was explored more and evolved and we got to see more about her, that was where I started to get more of the personal attachment because she is someone who has had to deal with a lot of bullying, a lot of strife, a lot of troubles in her life that has made things difficult for her. And without going
Mm-hmm.
into too deep, that is stuff that I have kind of related to. I too have been bullied. I have been ostracized for my differences. I have dealt with a lot of personal hurdles and a lot of surprise hurdles, much like Velvet has as well. So a lot of that I just, especially when I was reading through After the Fall and Before the Dawn, but like especially After the Fall, where she has this great arc of trying to prove her worth, that she appreciates being coddled and protected by her team, and obviously she's had to try and prove herself in the face of being bullied for her race and everything that she's like seen as like, oh, timid and meek, but she's actually this really strong, smart character. She's actually credited as probably one of the strongest fighters because of her semblance, photographic memory.
Yes.
Like there's this one line that Coco says, like she can fight like so many other people, but no one can fight like Velvet because of the way she's
Yes.
able to adapt her style. And obviously she's got the fantastic Anisadora camera weapon copying all the other people, but I love the flaws in that as well, where it's the things that she cherishes most, like memories of those that she cares about, or the photos that she's carried with her life, is also ammo for her to fight and protect those same lives.
Yes, that is very
such a
symbolic.
symbolic, yeah, heartfelt. And that's a fantastic angle there. And again, it's like I love at face value, all you see is just the cute bunny girl who is meek. She kind of succumbs sometimes to the bullying that she has to deal with. But when you knuckle down, you see the deeper layers to her. She's so strong. She is the soul of her team. She is trying to show adversity against racism and bullying through kindness, not through force. That's the reason why she kind of like almost begrudgingly bumps off all the abuse that she's held.
Right.
She's also dealing a lot of stuff with her family and how divided that is, and how she sees her teammates as her newfound family.
Right.
And that is so endearing to me for all those personal reasons and just how strongly emotionally engaging it is. Like I'm so deeply appreciative of what EC Myers did for that character because again, she started out as just like only implemented to show off the discrimination angle. And then another element that I love about Velvet is like she is probably the personification of the RWBY fandom because
Yes.
we have made an impact on her.
Yes, we had
created her design.
I still remember those production diaries as well from narrowing down all the different designs and seeing the different ones that people would post and the submissions all the way back then. She's voiced by somebody who was at one point the lead of a fan community for Rooster Teeth.
Yeah, Katie. I love everything that she's brought to the character. Again, very sweet, very earnest. I loved how spirited it is. I love the interaction she had with RWBY, where she's just like very earnest and sincere. She wants to like ask about how Yang's doing, but she's kind of like skirting it.
Yeah.
She probably understands like people who have gone through a lot of pain, a lot of strife. You don't want to touch on that, but that kind of speaks to the heart of Velvet, that she wants to be there if she can. Everything that those books did for Velvet, I just admire so much. on a personal level, on a characterization, like evolving level. She has great dynamics with her teammates, especially with Coco and Yatsu, even Fox as well. But like I would say, Coco and Yatsu the most. And Before the Dawn, she has some great stuff with Sun. There's this fantastic scene where Sun's surprised that Velvet of all people would lie. But again, that kind of goes back to one facet of Velvet where she is willing to play up the meek and the innocent if it's something that could be beneficial to either like helping protect someone or just something that can help avoid some strife in the world, even on her. Again, I love the fact that someone is so timid, so weak on the surface, has all these deeper layers to her. She is one of the most human characters, I feel, of the side cast, and it's a shame that a lot of people have missed out on reading the books. I would highly recommend it for what it does for Team Coffee and especially Velvet. Again, I talk so long about Velvet. I probably will at some point in my own video at some point, but and there's a reason why she's become so defined for me. One of the things I love about her the most is she shows that it is okay to be sweet and kind and be true to yourself in a world of darkness. And even when you're dealing with so much strife in your own world and those around you, it is good. It is right to be kind, to be happy and find that happiness. And I deeply admire that from that character. Again, from someone who started out as just a plot device.
The next two are both characters that I like them, but for just whatever like personal reasons, I can't like them enough on this list, even though like I recognize that they are supporting, is Neapolitan and Ironwood.
Oh, interesting.
Neo is like, I have a love-hate relationship with Neo. We are going to see Neo going to have a very purposeful involvement in Volume 9, which is I feel like the reason that she re-entered the plot from a writing standpoint was for what they want to use her for in Volume 9, and I'm just kind of waiting until that before I can really rank her on this list. Just before we get into your number one, I will say I don't know who it is. I don't. Now that you put Velvet at number 2, I have no idea.
I had a feeling that would happen.
Yeah,
and it's even better now because it's someone that has actually already obviously been brought up.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
And it's also amazing considering the positional contrast. Because my number one is Neo.
Neo, yeah. I had a feeling. I don't think he mentioned him or her during his honorable mentions. So no. Take me through this.
This is one where it's the perfect marriage for me of like a personal favorite pick and also the one that I think is probably critically the best side character, because just on a personal level, she is one of the best animated characters in this entire series. Obviously, a lot of that comes down to her disability, her muteness, the way they've animated around that being tremendous for so many volumes now. And she is somehow one of the most expressive characters in the series, despite that.
Yeah.
And it's obviously one of the biggest appeals of her characters. Incredible in fighting as well. She fights unlike anyone else, really, very loose and very free flowing, but it's also very playful as well. I love that kind of like playful fighting style in characters like her. There's also some great trickster elements that I love, obviously kind of going back to the thief element, but more in a criminal sense. And then the way that she's able to bounce off the characters around her, obviously Roman, Cinder, Ruby, even little bits just like people that she ends up fighting for a moment in like the briefest of spells, like the moment she had with Ren turning into Nora and impact that left on him in Volume 7, interactions she had with Jean as well, like showing the way she bounced off of that, and with Oscar as well. And I do think she's going to have some great stuff as well with Jean, at least I would hope so, in Volume 9 because of the similarities they both share in their personal stories. Roman Holiday, fantastic book, seeing more of like everything that created the chaotic, playful trickster character that is also another tragic character who has had to deal with a lot of strife in this very unfair world. And it speaks again to the quality of writing from E.C. Myers, from how they are able to bring that kind of characterization out of someone who we've never even like hear speak before. There's just so much about Nia that I love because she is both such a scene stealer, much like Robin. You love every like aspect of the character design. I love all the different outfits and like illusions she's had. And then the fighting's is the expressions. Like, I could go on for ages with Neo, and again, it's like the reasons why I did keep her in line, even with my regulations, is because she is still a supporting element to those around her, even when she's acting by her own wants, and even when she has her own book, exploring her backstory. Like, obviously, the chemistry she has with Roman and being like his escape, but also like the only one that really works best with Roman, even more so than all the allies they have. Sorry, the interesting dynamic of her and Cinder, where they are both acting on the same wants in a sense, but they are also clearly enemies. They have this unique rivalry banter, so to speak. And again, all this from a character we've not heard a single word from other than a gasp.
Yeah. And who has efforts in Blaze Blue Cross
Yeah.
tag battle from Casey Lee Williams.
Thank you, Casey. And again, that's another element of like, I know that Neo was actually a request from Rooster Teeth to be in that game, because I think Oxys themselves, they wanted Adam and Penny, or at least they were considering those two, but Rooster Teeth requested Neo. But even without that aspect, you would imagine a lot of people wanted Neo, and just from the reception of when she was revealed as a DLC character for that, people really gravitates to this character. And it's still one of the most iconic characters in the series for so much reasons, even though, again, in the grand scheme of things, she's not really a major character. And the fact that also a late entry character, it's well documented now, like how late in the game she was added into Volume 2 from Monty. That also speaks to the quality that Monty brings to his characters. Like, one of the most unique designs from Ice Cream of all things, from a gender cosplayer Roman.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then, much like with Velvet, she's evolved. She's been one of the most dynamic characters in this series, and it's hard to hate her for that, even when she's doing dastardly things and being essential to so much pain of our favorite characters.
Yeah, and I do like her. I do like her as the sort of rule of cool character, sort of changing the story as it goes type of character by adding her, because Roman needs a getaway of all things, and it needs to be something that is easy to animate, so that's where her semblance comes from. So she comes from that. Ultimately, like, yeah, it's not that I don't like her, it's just like I have mixed feelings that I kind of want to see where the story goes with her before I can really sort them out. But
and again, I can understand that as well.
Yeah, but the highs are high still.
I've had little bits of with how she's willingly gone along with some of the Cinder stuff, and she seems like she would be smart enough to notice some of the tricks in Cinder, but that kind of also plays into how well I think Cinder does actually be a bit more trickery and a bit more schemy when obviously the stuff with Watts happens, and she does take things a little bit more cautiously. And I do think that will actually benefit Neo in Volume 9 when we see obviously like her, she's going to be flipping raging. Like, we've already seen her mad before, but this is going to be at like a different level. And I'm fascinated to see where that goes, and maybe some of the interactions she has with maybe Jean, of like both of them dealing with a lot of loss and being seen as like outcast, and all the pains that they have to maybe like sacrifice and like cherish in their hearts, and almost like be a burden, but also like a strength to move them forward. And also, again, like Velvet, a disability character, someone that I can resonate with in that aspect as well. Again, there's just so much to Neo, and it's just fascinating for someone who, for maybe like one brief decision, wasn't going to be in RWBY. But in the end, it worked to the character's benefit. It worked to so many other characters' benefits, the story's benefits, and the series' benefits, and even just like the continued popularity of RWBY. Like, I think Neo's been another essential part of that.
And I don't know if I really have too much else to say. Obviously, I am going to read Roman Holiday before Volume 9 comes out. What do you, any closing thoughts for her?
Yeah, I mean, again, if we're talking about like my all-time favorites, Velvet would lead the way as the staple, but that perfect marriage of a fan favorite character, probably the critical best character in terms of side characters, just everything that she's done as a character so far, and everything she could do as a character, the meta sense, the in-universe sense, there's just so much to love about Neo that there's a reason why she has become larger than life, despite everything that could have held her back.
And that leads into the last section of this very long video that may need to be split up into two parts at this point. My number one is Ilya Amitola.
Yeah, I knew this would happen.
to a surprise of only maybe a few, at least for those who follow me on Twitter especially, I don't think there's anything about Ilya or about her arc that I don't like. Everything is just all appealing to me, adding a lot of depth to Blake's backstory, that being the parts of the backstory that we don't see of her just traveling with the White Fang, being with the White Fang, with herself and Adam and Blake, being the perfect foil to Blake, that when she does show up in Volume 4, she's allowing Blake to have about as much meaningful character growth over the Mistral arc or Menagerie arc as we possibly could get out of Blake. That is, to me, the arc that I like the most for Blake, that I feel like Blake gets the best characterization over the course of the show, and it is largely because of, as I said earlier, because of Sun and Ilya, that she has her own very well executed redemption arc of being this person who is like Blake, but if Blake stayed with the White Fang, who now Blake is turning around and understanding what life has been like for her and how good it's been, and the amount of growth that she's had outside of the White Fang, and unlearning the sort of stuff that she's dealt with under Adam, and it is now putting that forth and being that positive force for change for Ilya. On another note, her characterization of having unrequited love for Blake, and also being the first, I think the first major form of LGBT representation in this show, in the form of lesbian representation. Jeremy Lay does so much for Ilya in so many of the different types of scenes that Ilya had. I believe Ilya only had one line in all of Volume 4, and it was, "You shouldn't have come back." So even in just that one line, it's like, you shouldn't have come back, but I'm also struggling in saying that because I do like you and admire you having this history with you. Like, there's this definite sense of history.
There's a pain to that, rather than just like strict anger or like a threat. No, it's like there's almost like a welcomeness to it, but the forefront is bitterness and almost like, please run away, because I can't deal with this, and I don't want to be facing you like this.
Yeah, there's so much in that one line that we learn for her more and more as Volume 5 goes on. And then getting to see her in Volume 6 as a completely, totally different delivery, where now she's in a place where it's a very much a softer tone of voice of just talking with friends, and a totally different atmosphere than she had before. Yeah. Not to mention, I kind of skipped over Volume 5, but the anger that she had of quit taking pot shots, fight me like you mean it, you used to see things the way that I did, the way Adam did, ultimately leading into feeling like she only had one path forward in life, being the one that the White Fang presented her with after the death of her parents, and finding a sense of normalcy, but not necessarily the normalcy that she should have,
or even one that she feels like she deserves. Like, that she has that line, was like, she doesn't really like know what the future holds for her, and she's almost like, she doesn't feel like she deserves this chance of redemption, but she's still willing to take it because of everything that's been put into trying to save her.
Yes, and then like, I'll join you if you'll have me, and the pain of if you'll have me is like, if I'm worthy of this redemption. And ultimately she knows that Blake is really the only person who can give it to her, because everybody else she doesn't have any connection with. So it would take Blake speaking up for her, and Blake does. And then leading into the casual outfit that she gets in Volume 6,
which looks really great. I love a casual outfit.
And sending Blake off with a hug that looks like it's more than a hug at first.
Which I would be remiss with. I wouldn't hate it.
You know, staying in Mistral to help on that front with Gira, and that sort of funnest subplot that we'll see how it might get picked back up in the future, depending on X number of factors, but still finding a sense of normalcy and still feeling that attachment to Blake in the form of like being around Blake's family and staying with Gira, and ultimately staying with Kali as well, probably.
I've already said before, like, she's a good foil for Blake. But like nail it down to like a more accurate summarization. Blake's arc for the longest time was always running away from the tough choices, running away from the journey that she was on when it gets to its first hurdle. Whereas with Ilya, she's always been thrusted into these different directions, and anytime she's faced with that strong hurdle in a way, she's faced with little other option than to try and bust through it, even if it's causing her great pain. So again, like Blake ran, Ilya had to stay. And then as soon as she's able to like find a new direction, she doesn't run away. She's willing to stay in Mistral, like you said, to actually find a new direction. And it feels justified, it feels rewarding, even if she herself feels like she doesn't deserve it, I should say. And a lot of that comes down to just how well her arc was explored and like how well it reflects on Blake. Jeremy's fantastic performances throughout. Few characters have been able to show great humanization to their weaker moments as much as their like raw anger and aggression. And a lot of that comes down to Jeremy's performance. In a sense, like when we got to her sending off, it's the point where it's like, I wish you could stay. I wish you could come with us. Even now, like I've long thought about doing a rewrite of like what would it be like if Ilya stayed. I've also now become a huge shipper of Emerald and Ilya because of the similarities they both share. And Emerald was able to join the heroes and stay, at least for the long term. But at the same time, because of everything she's gone through, I want her to go off on her own path and not be directed by anyone else other than her own wants. And it feels the right move for her character.
Yeah, and as you were saying about like her similarities with Emerald and shipping them together, I have it in my notes, like unrequited love plus lesbian representation with Ilya equals amazing fanfic potential.
Yes, it does lean into that.
I totally see the amount of like brain rot that myself included and people will get for wanting to see this character explored in all of these different ways that this character wants to be able to, because they have unrequited love. It's like, so it's like I want to give her that opportunity in a sort of sense. And also at the same time, please keep her away from the main plot. Let her have some sort of some normalcy and some stability.
God damn it, we need some characters to have some pure and innocent happiness in this world.
No, I'm fine with not seeing much of her because that at least means she's probably just living her life. God dang it.
Is she secret? Is she safe?
Yeah, no, and I love Ilya just in general. I'm drawn to that type of character who has some sort of traumatic past, who just gets trapped in this sort of headspace to where they have an emotionally misguided narrative or motivation. I feel like that's almost every character in like Persona 5 Royal. Especially like
Jeremy.
Which, oh god, the similarities that I have with Makoto are too deep for me to want to get into right now. The characters that you just want to give them a room in your coffee shop to relax in it, just a safe space. You need a couch. You can crash on my couch all you want. I'll make you some curry. I'll make you some coffee.
Yeah, don't look out the window. There's darkness out there. Just focus on the good. Stay nice
I
cozy.
just want to give them that opportunity to have some sort of normalcy. Just allow them to just be themselves, because whatever previous environment they were in, they don't have that opportunity, or they never could.
Especially for Ilya, that is someone who has gone through that for so long, even going back to her time at the academy that she was.
See Ilya, see Penny, see all of these other.
That is a unending list at the moment.
See Kasumi Yoshisawa, Persona 5, see all these other characters that I don't want to get into. Those are my characters. As much as you have your Emeralds and your Velvet, for me, that's just that's Ilya.
And again, Ilya was number 6 for me, and I could have easily put her to my top 5 for much of the same reasons as you. It just kind of again speaks to the wide variety of strong side supporting characters out there that we kind of agreed on a lot of the same reasons, even if we never agreed on any of the positions. We didn't match up at all. And in some cases, we had some big gaps, like obviously me and Neo, mostly down to like the rules and regulations, but at the same time there was no like disagreements, like no major differences on how we felt.
That is all of our characters. I've said about as much as I could about Ilya. I think
we said all we could say forget about all these characters and then some.
And then some, because we're at almost 4 hours now.
Woof.
Yeah, and as much as this is probably also a factor of us getting the chance to sit down and talk, and if this weren't the first time we were mentioning all this with each other, we probably wouldn't go for 4 hours. But so that is going to be it for this video. Thank you to ThatKaitoDan for sticking around with me and really talking through so much about all of these different characters.
This has been one of my most favorite interactions, because I've done a few collabs over the years, but this has been so rewarding. Obviously, like the first time we've got to work together, throwing out all our different opinions and stances like this, I've almost gained like a newfound fascination for some of these characters now because of this. Again, thank you so much for having me, mate. I could not have asked for a better partner on this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that this is the kind of idea that I've been wanting to explore for a while, and to get to have someone else to come in and collaborate with on this. I've been looking forward to finding something to collaborate with you on.
Same.
So that is going to do it. Hey, Dan, where can they find you?
Well, funny you should ask. They can find me at ThatKaitoDan on YouTube, as well as on Twitter, and pretty much any social media page that probably isn't on fire right now. But in terms of YouTube, I do a lot of the same stuff that Raijin does. I do reviews on the episodes and reactions to come as well, so be on the lookout for that. And just any kind of like topic on RWBY that I have on mind. I got a lot of stuff in the pipeline. Look forward to that, including my long-awaited RWBY rewrite that I've been working on. I can't wait to get that out. And beyond RWBY, I also do reactions for like some of the big gaming stuff, like Nintendo Directs. I want to do some more stuff on like Pokemon and Kingdom Hearts, maybe, as we get into like new entries on them, as well as some anime stuff. So yeah, and I'm always going to be around like the RWBY scene. I'll be on like Arnold's streams, Cow streams. I'm always going to be the guy making all the bad puns on Twitter, so you'll probably see me at some point.
And this is definitely not the last collab. I do have more in mind that I would like to do. That when the time comes, we'll definitely see what might still happen. Thanks again to Dan for sticking around with me for the 4 hours that we've been recording this. And
thank you for having me. I promise you the next one won't have me rambling so much.
I'm guilty of that as well. So like and subscribe. I'll see you all next time. I'm Raijin Rising. Have a good one.
Peace out.